mathematicians. So last week, Heidi taught you that you can actually compare the lengths of things. For example, we could put these in order from the shortest to the longest, right? By comparing the lengths. I know that if I'm going to measure these, I have to line them up end to end, just like Heidi showed us. Yes, look at that. I lined them up so that the ends are all starting at the same spot. And then you can compare. You can see that the Q-tip is longer than the cube. The mouse toy is longer than the Q-tip. And the pen is longer than the mouse, right? But today I want to teach you that you can actually find out how long or short something is by measuring it with other things. A thing that you use to measure something else is called a unit, okay? It's like when you go to the doctor and they are measuring your height, how tall you are. They're going to measure with feet or inches, right? Those are called units. But you don't have to use feet or inches to measure. You could also use just other stuff. But there's a couple of rules, so I'll tell you those rules. When we're measuring with units, we have to make sure that everything is the same. Are cubes all the same size? Yeah. So I could use this as a unit to measure with because they're all the same. But I couldn't use some cubes and some pennies and some Q-tips to measure because these are all different sizes. So those aren't going to work and give us a measurement that's really accurate. But if I use all cubes or all pennies or all Q-tips, then that would work. Another rule is that you have to do the same thing as before where you're lining things up from end to end. If I wanted to use pennies to measure this pen and find out how many pennies long it is, I have to make sure that my very first penny starts all the way at the end lined up, and then I actually have to keep going until it perfectly gets to the other end. So let's keep adding some pennies. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We use pennies as units to measure the pen. So this pen is 8 pennies long. One thing that's really important is you want to be making a really straight line with the units that you're measuring with. If I had these all like this, look, I would probably want to add some extra ones to make it fill all the way up. But that's actually too many because remember we said that when you straighten it all out, it's really only 8 pennies. So you want to make sure that you keep the things you're measuring with really straight so you get it accurate. And the other thing is you don't want gaps or overlaps. So I'll show you what that means. If I have a big space right here, I'm not really even measuring that space. I didn't put anything there. So I would probably think that it was only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pennies long if I did it that way. So we don't want to have any gaps. We want to be really accurate. You don't want to overlap the things either. So if I had the pennies all on top of each other, they're squished together and I'm not seeing that it's 8 pennies long. So you want to have a straight line with no gaps and no overlaps. You want your units that you're using to measure to all be the same. So let's try this really quick with a different kind of unit. So if I wanted to measure this stapler, first let me try it with some cubes because cubes are all the same size, right? So I'm going to line them up so that it starts at one end. Should we count and see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the stapler is 9 cubes long. But what if I used something else? Like, what if I used these Q-tips? Do you think it's going to be 9 Q-tips, just like it was 9 cubes? 1, 2. It's about 2 Q-tips long, but it was 9 cubes long. Why do you think that it might be 2 Q-tips long, but 9 cubes long. If you think that it's because the Q-tips and the cubes are different sizes, you're right. The Q-tips are bigger, they're longer than the cubes. So it doesn't take as many Q-tips to fill up the whole space of the stapler. So even though the stapler is 9 cubes long, it's only 2 Q-tips long. So mathematicians, today you learn how to use objects that are all the same size as a way to measure other things that are bigger and figure out what the length is. You could figure out how many cubes long something is. You could figure out how many paper clips long something is, how many pennies long. Anything that you have at home where you have a bunch of them and they're smaller and they're all the same size, you could use that as a way to measure other things. So when you're done here, go ahead and start looking in your home for things to measure with and things to measure. Find 3 objects that you want to measure and 1 type of unit that you could use to measure them with. Then head over to the template that's attached here so you can let us know what you measured with, how long the things were, which one was the shortest and the longest. It's going to be fun.